Tabor. Here. Chair Blackerby.
Here. All right, we're here. Let's see. So just so folks know, there's been a switch in the agenda, just in order. Item number 5, the traffic solutions presentation, is actually going to be moved above items 3 and 4. So that's going to jump the line in front of MTD. Thank you for your flexibility, everyone. But first we have public comment for items not on the agenda. I have 2 slips. If anyone else is wishing to speak either on something not on the agenda or something on the agenda, please fill out the forms. They're sitting right over there. First is Ralph Ferdig, to be followed by Roy Martinez and Henry Andrews. Okay, Mr. Ferdig. Push the button.
Push the button. Chair Blackerby and members of the committee. A young couple, Aaron and Kim, recently opened a coffee shop on Ken and Perdido and came up with a way to double vehicle parking on the commercial block across from the Presidio. It's a bike corral. That's a dedicated space on the public right-of-way to accommodate 8 to 12 bicycling customers and employees in the same space as single car parked on the street. As neighboring business owners learned about the corral, they have enthusiastically supported it. Bike corrals have been popping up around the U.S. in the past few years. Portland, Oregon now has installed 80 of them at locations around the city. Upon seeing their success, other businesses have applied to Portland for more. In California, bike corrals have been installed in San Francisco, Palo Alto, San Luis Obispo, Los Angeles, Long Beach, Santa Monica, and elsewhere. Bike corrals provide benefits where bicycle use is high and growing. They advertise the bike friendliness to customers and promote bike viability to the public. They allow a clear view of storefronts not blocked by parked trucks or SUVs. For those sidewalk dining, they keep car fumes and pollution further away. They clear the sidewalks of parked bikes, and for sight-impaired individuals, make navigation of sidewalks safer. They're often located in the front of businesses like coffee shops and restaurants. Some cities like Santa Monica install them on red curbed areas near intersections where large motor vehicles would block the view of oncoming traffic, but parked bicycles do not. We're certainly looking forward to Santa Barbara taking advantage of these beneficial parking solutions. I have one second item, and this is a flyer which I've put at your chairs, and this is information about the journey to work. U.S. Census Bureau has not only the decennial census every 10 years, but they started American Community Survey in 2005. And what it shows is that for alternatives to work, people in the city of Santa Barbara have been driving 11% less over the last 2 decades, but they've been bicycling more, they've been using the bus more, they've been walking more, and they've been working at home more. Bicycling has doubled over the last 20 years, and the other 3, walking and using the bus and working at home, have increased 50%. So things are on a good trend, and we certainly expect that it'll continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Forgot to mention that for public comment, it's 2 minutes per speaker. I also want to, just for future reference, when you fill out a request to speak form, please put your first and last name, and it's for the record, for the minutes, so that we know who was giving input. And also the agenda item number, if you can, so I know what you're here to speak about. So next, Roy Martinez and Henry Andrews.
I'm not even sure if this is the right form for the comment that my neighbor and I are here to express. We're both residents of Lou Dillon Court on the east side, and the main concern that we had was relative to non-resident parking in our cul-de-sac. We've had quite a bit of crime in the adjacent area, and there'll be, many nights people will come, non-residents that'll park, and, we've gone out late at night and found people smoking marijuana or drinking, and my neighbor will flash a light on their cars and they'll leave, or I'll walk out with my dog and they'll leave. But we have a lot of non-resident parking, either from apartments in the adjacent area or from people who just come in because it's not a well-lit cul-de-sac, and it's kind of an easy, convenient hiding place to do things that they don't want people to see them doing. We have a nice, quiet, clean neighborhood in our cul-de-sac. Neighbors take very good care of their properties, and this is kind of a real disturbing influence in our neighborhood. And anything that could be done to have resident permit parking for on-street or something to kind of mitigate this problem would be greatly appreciated. So we just wanted to express this. Is this the proper forum for that kind of a concern?
Actually, in terms of your request, no, it's not the right committee, but I'm not going to ask you to come to a different committee meeting. You can call the downtown parking program. The person you need to talk to is Brandon Bodette, and he's the one who handles the residential permit parking program, and he can walk you through the process you would have to go through.
Excellent. Okay, well, that was worthwhile for that. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. All right. This was for Roy Martinez and Henry Andrews. Oh, okay. Great. The next one is, I think this is Anna. And if I just call your first name, then if you can tell me your last name so I can fill it out on this. What's that? Okay, great. Okay. Great. And after Ana Rico is Eniden?
Yes.
Is that?
No, this is Erika.
Okay.
And
All right.
she has something
Just
to
speak
say
into
about
the microphone,
Salinas,
for sure.
About Salinas. She lives on Salinas and Salinas, and the cars go really, really fast. Where she lives, it's a driveway. She has to walk down, and the cars, when she and her husband need to go somewhere, the cars don't really see her, so there's been accidents, and it's really dangerous. But that's on her side. Yes. But on my side, it's also Salinas, which is, like I mentioned, the cacique. The kids walk through there is really, really dangerous. Also, there was, by the roundabout, there's like a little creek where the bus passed by. There's no sidewalk, and a lot of us have to walk through there. It's really dangerous. I would like for you guys to go and see it, or when you guys are driving through there, to kind of look through it, because I've noticed there's a lot of people that walk through it. Last time, I think it was last week, there was a dad with 2 little kids on the opposite side. Usually we walk on the right-hand side. He was on the left-hand side, which is really dangerous. And it looked like he was visiting, so he didn't know. He was expecting to still walk through the sidewalk. There's no sidewalks right there. But that's it. Thank you.
Okay. And could you give me the last name of the person that you spoke for?
Nava.
Nava?
N-A-V-E-A.
What street, what block of Salinas Street were you talking about?
Salinas and Salinas for her, and I'm talking about the roundabout. Before you hit the APS, there's a little creek right there where the bus... On Salinas, before you hit the Salinas, yes. And that little creek is really, really awful.
Okay. So, Maria to be followed by Erica. Oh, that was Erica. Okay. But not, okay. Eniden. Okay. No Maria? No Eniden? Not speaking? Okay. Okay. Teresa? Okay.
Hi, my name is Teresa Alvarez,
Can you,
and
sorry, can you pull the
I
microphone?
cannot speak a lot English, but I think I understand. As I am a member of the East Side community, I had asked what there is the more safety on the Salinas Street for our children, and especially around Cleveland School. Cars go too fast on Salinas.
Okay.
Yes.
Gracias.
Thank you.
And your last name, Teresa?
Teresa Alvarez.
Alvarez.
Yes.
Gracias.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please and thank you.
Thank you. All right. Maria? Maria to be followed by Eva Inbar. Thank you for your help, Ana.
Her name's Maria.
María Delgado.
Delgado.
Yo vengo para pedirles de favor porque es que llueve, cuando llueve mucho, ¿no? Tengo un niño incapacitado, pero realmente necesitaba ver si me podían ayudar para poner una rampa o un señalero para levantar a los incapacitados donde vivo.
She's asking as a favor if you guys could help her because where she lives, tu dirección? 227 South Salinas. It's a building with apartments. She has a disabled child, and it's really complicated for her to help out her son because he's in a wheelchair, and she wants a ramp. If you guys could help her out with that, it's really complicated for her. And there's also a bus that passes by her house to pick up her son. And as I know that when it's on red on the sidewalk, you can't park there. It's really, really complicated for the bus to see it because it's not painted red anymore. It's really faded. And the cars, because they have to drive to Salinas, it makes it really complicated. So the bus doesn't even go inside her apartment building because to get out, it's really complicated to get out. The cars don't let them. It doesn't give them any chance for the bus to go in and out because they're always going too fast.
Okay.
¿Otra cosa que querías decir? That's
Okay.
it. Thank
Gracias.
you.
One second. You have a question?
I just had a question. Is when you speak of a bus, are you speaking of a shuttle bus for school or for MTD? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Eva Inbar to be followed by Joel Schwimmer.
Hi, good evening. My name is Eva Inbar. I'm with Coast, and I'm with the East Side Walk Project, and you're seeing some of the people that we've been working with since last year on problems on the East Side. And we appreciate all the attention that Milpas has been getting that obviously needed to be done. That was a good thing, and we helped with that, and we were very involved in that. But there are more problems in the East Side than just Milpas. Salinas has big problems, the neighborhood has problems, and we need some attention to be paid to that. We submitted 2 reports, one in September of 2011 and one in February of 2011. We wrote a letter to Public Works in October of 2011 about these problems. We have never had any response. We need someone from Public Works, Transportation, to work with us on these problems. The facilities manager, Jim Dewey, has been great working on streetlights with us, but this is mainly about transportation. These are transportation and traffic safety issues that we have. So please, we need someone from Public Works to respond to us and to work with us on these problems. They will not go away, and we will be here until somebody gets back to us and actually works with us. Here are the some of the letters and reports that we sent. We've had no response on them at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hold up your signs, please. If you're with the East Side groups, hold up your signs.
Beautiful signs. All right.
I know some of these people are shy to speak, and so they are all with us, and they're just a very few of the people we've been working with. Thanks.
Okay. Joel Schwimmer to be followed by Ana Munoz.
Thanks for hearing me. I'm Joel Schwimmer. I just moved to the east side a little over a year ago. I live on 500 Street near Voluntario. I'm just amazed to find out how fast the drivers are permitted to go on the cross street. I mean, traveling between Salinas and Milpas. It's so different from other areas. I live downtown, and there's no way the drivers go that fast. I think that the drivers seem to have an idea that by the way, a lot of drivers do drive safely, it seems, but there's so many regular drivers who seem to think it's their right to just go full speed as fast as they think is safe to them from Salinas to Milpas or Milpas to Salinas or parts of it. And I think it's because there's no stop signs on the cross streets. And I'm not saying there needs to be stop signs. I'm just saying that they have this idea that this is their highway. And I think it's really scary to people trying to cross the street near where I live, which is Voluntario. I also think it's scary to drivers who are trying to get across 500 or get onto 500, because these drivers, like I say, only a minority, but many just go down the street like it's their highway. People pulling out driveways have a problem, and I have observed some of these drivers coming down really fast, honking their horns, and being upset because something got in their way. So I hope there's some way to look into what's the way to influence these drivers or educate these drivers and let them know that speeds above. I would hope 25 miles an hour would be a speed limit. I wish there was. I'd like to see if there's some way to influence these drivers to let them know that they don't. It's not appropriate to go that fast. I don't know if it's signs clearly saying that there's 25 mile an hour speed limit. Do you paint 25 miles per hour on the street so they can see it? I really think these drivers aren't malicious. I just think they don't have no idea that they're not supposed to go that fast. And I think something should be done to slow them down before someone gets hurt. And one last thing is, like, I think people crossing the street have a hard time judging how fast these drivers are coming. So I think the drivers need to be slowed down somewhat, or someone will get hurt. Thanks for hearing me.
Thank you. Ana Munoz, to be followed by Elizabeth Buenaventura.
Hello. So likewise, my main concern this time around is the East Side community, and specifically the intersection at Soledad and Mason. And the reason being is because there's a lot of children in that neighborhood, and there's Franklin Elementary School, which is, I think, the biggest elementary school in Santa Barbara, and then there's Adelante Charter School, and then there's preschool, which in total is 1,000 kids, actually. So that's a lot of kids that are going through that intersection, and it's a very dangerous intersection for various reasons. So speeding problem is one of the main concerns. People are going by really fast on Mason, and then another thing is visibility at night is horrible. That crosswalk is just not very visible, and it's so scary driving by there, just being afraid that somebody might be crossing. And also just visibility during the day. You know, you have to emphasize more that it's a crosswalk because there's 3 schools there. And then, so that's my biggest concern, because I've lived there, around there for 26 years, and you don't even know how many accidents I've seen. The worst one was actually a death about 15 years ago, when it was like dusk time. A lady was going over to night school around 6 o'clock p.m., and it was, you know, that time of night where you can't really see somebody, and it was just really tragic. The other thing is also, you know, the other main streets, Gutierrez, people are going down really fast from APS. Coda, I know, Haley. Those are some of the main ones that people are just, you know, they think it's a highway or something, and they're just flying down those streets. And there's not enough stop signs in all the intersections, and there's blind intersections. So it's just dangerous left and right on the east side in a lot of these streets. So I just ask for your help, and, you know, you have experience, and there's engineers working with you, and you can get our help from the community and the feedback, but we can work hand in hand, and I think that's what we can get from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth Buenaventura, and that's the last one I have.
Hi. I'm actually representing people that actually walk home, walk to school, walk everywhere, basically. I lived on the east side for all my life, and I know for a fact that Della Garrett, by Taco Bell, walking home late at night, it's not safe. I've actually been stalked, followed many times. And then Cacique Street is another street I've seen people laying on the floor. I've seen kids getting hit sometimes. And there's no street lights there. So no one can call in, no one can protect them, because people just walk away from it if it's dark. It's scary at night. And then Pito Street too. I ride my bike a lot. So going through Pito Street, going to Vaughn's to go buy groceries, it's not a safe area either. I did get run over, actually. Garden Street, going to work, it's really hard getting from place to place. But I mean, more lights at night, more signs saying like 25 miles per hour. That would be lovely. A little bit more awareness too, like reaching out to the community and telling them it's not okay, or putting more stop signs, a little bit more stop signs actually. And another thing too, Cañón Perdido, going to State Street, a lot of kids don't have cars because they just don't have cars. And well, walking down State Street, actually right here down Coda Street, that's very popular too. And Haley, they're all shortcuts to go back home. There's a lot of people that need your guys' help. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So that's all I have for public comment, both on items not on the agenda, and I don't have any public comment slips for items on the agenda. So if you want to speak on any of those items, definitely fill one out.
Chair Blackerby,
yeah.
Just for the information for those who are in the audience, just so they understand that we are not ignoring the area of Salinas Street. We have a Safe Route to School project that we got a grant for to address safety of students going to and from Cleveland Elementary School, Salinas at Clifton, and a couple other intersections that we are working on. Jim Dewey is aware of needs for street lighting. He's walked with Eva Embar. He's developing a plan on how to implement it because it's a matter of coming up with money. And we also are in the process of installing some access ramps in different areas on the Salinas corridor. So we are doing some things in the area. Maybe not everything everybody wants, but we're doing it with the resources that we have and the policy direction that we have.
Okay. Yeah, I would, as I've requested, not at this meeting, or not at a meeting, but of staff, that I would like to see on a future agenda a look at safety on Salinas, and in the larger east side, obviously, but Salinas in particular, to take a holistic look, before something tragic happens. I want us to take a more than just the Safe Routes to School project, I guess is what I'm saying, that we can take a look at how can we make it safe before something bad happens. So I would request that again, and hope that we can address that issue soon. And really appreciate the public coming out and telling us what it's like every day in your neighborhood. So, all right. So next is consent calendar approval of minutes from our March 22nd joint meeting of the Neighborhood Advisory Council and TCC. Yes. And
just to comment again, thank you very much for such very, very detailed notes. I thought they were excellent. I'm sure there's a few little spelling things, but it's not worth going through details. I think they were just wonderful. So thank you very much for doing that. And I move to approve the minutes.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second that and double down on those comments about the thoroughness and the accuracy of the minutes as I read them. One correction on the first page, the date must have carried over from your template from the last time doing it. So if it gets changed to March 22nd. And the only other thing, and I don't know if it's probably not worth going back and checking the record, was he should be a record of what was said at the meeting. But on page 9, under Casey Kilgore's comments, she mentions that Principal Franklin School, and then she says the other side of Milpas Street is closer to Washington School. And Washington School is all the way on the other side of town on the Mesa. I don't know if she said Washington School. She may have meant Roosevelt or McKinley or Cleveland or something else. But I don't want you to spend any time going back and looking at that, though. But it's probably what she said.
Okay. So the motion and second. Is there
with the one change on the cover?
Okay, with change on the cover. Any more changes or discussion? No. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right. The minutes are adopted. Okay, so next we have a presentation from Kent Epperson from Traffic Solutions, and he's going to talk to us about a project that Traffic Solutions is working on.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. First, I just wanted to point out a couple items that I put before you. Postcard, Cycle Mania is upon us. The month of May, we have about 29 events, working closely with the Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition. On the back is a list of the events. One that I particularly wanted to invite all of you to attend is our kickoff event, which is the Bicycle Fashion Show. And in front of you, you have a little flyer, that the Bicycle Fashion Show. That's a first Thursday event. It's a lot of fun, and you won't be disappointed. So hope you can join us. So I appreciate having a few minutes of your time today. I'll try to make my presentation brief. A couple weeks ago, I presented to the Downtown Parking Committee this project, and we felt like we wanted to keep your committee in the loop and really value your input in this exciting project called Smart Ride. Smart Ride is a pilot program that we are. Is this working? Can you hear me? Okay. It sounded like maybe it wasn't working. Yeah. That we're working with the Community Environmental Council, and we'll be embarking on this in the next couple months. The reason we're coming to you and the reason we came to the Downtown Parking Committee is not only do we want to inform you about the project, but also we would like to present maybe some options for some parking incentives as part of this project. So with that, we'll go ahead and get into the presentation. I'm going to go quickly through this part. Traffic Solutions is the rideshare organization. We are a division of the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments. And this is kind of a list of some of the things we do. Employer consulting. We also put on, of course, Cycle Mania and the Bike Challenge. Van pool assistance. We help people form van pools. We do rideshare promotions like Rideshare Week. And we also put out the Santa Barbara County Bike Map, and we're involved in bike education at employment sites. Our mission is to reduce traffic congestion and improve air quality. I'd like to focus the discussion on carpooling. I'll move quickly through this as well. Most of you are familiar with the benefits of carpooling, but one of the biggest benefits I see with carpooling is that it is a way to get people out of their cars in a very cost-effective way, because it doesn't require government subsidies, it doesn't require building bridges, it doesn't require building new parking lots, so it's very cost-effective. It reduces traffic congestion. That's part of the reason why we're involved with promoting carpooling. Light on infrastructure, so roads and parking lots will last longer. Reduces our emissions, so it cleans the air, and it's also socially beneficial as well. This is a chart that shows some statistics from a couple surveys, the American Commuter Survey as well as the Commuter Profile Survey that we put out. I just want to point out the carpool number there. It's important to note that Santa Barbara County is significantly higher than the national average. We've got about 17% of commute trips are by carpool. So we live in a community where people are receptive and interested in carpooling. When we do surveys like the Commuter Profile Survey, we ask people what their carpool was comprised of. And it's not a big surprise that about 75% of the carpools out there are with coworkers. And it makes sense because when you work with someone, you trust them, you know that you're destined for the same location, and you can also find out where they live. Traffic Solutions has been in the business of helping people form carpools since it was formed in 1993. It's changed with the technology. We used to literally just have a list of addresses, and we would mail out a little match list to people. Now it's online. We have Traffic Solutions online. About 5,000 individuals are registered for the commuter matching system. It does a really good job of forming carpools for kind of the traditional carpool. So these are the ones that are every day. The carpool travels the same location, the same time. Usually these people find the carpool through our system, and they may end up actually being with that carpool for years. We have carpools that have been in existence for upwards of 10 years even. What our system does not do well is it does not provide carpool assistance for people that have flexible schedules. So people like, for instance, the restaurant workers or the hotel workers, retail employees downtown. We don't do a very good job because their schedules are changing from day to day, from week to week. It also doesn't do a very good job with kind of the one-off trips, the trips that's not a commuter trip, but it's maybe just a trip to grocery store or whatnot. Also shorter trips, because in general, carpooling is something that people will only do if it's a long distance trip, because that's what saves you money. And let's face it, it's an inconvenience. How many of you have heard of slug lines? Okay. Well, slug lines is a very interesting social experiment that many of us in my industry have been looking at for quite a few years. Slugging is this concept whereby you generally have a HOV lane or an HOT lane, so it's a high occupancy toll lane, or a toll bridge. So you have a situation where carpoolers travel through that toll road or through the toll bridge for free if they've got a passenger in their car. So you have this natural inclination for people that are wanting to save some money to find a passenger to fill their empty seat. What's happened over the years is that an informal situation has come about without any government intervention, without any government subsidies, where people queue up that are looking for a ride, people that are looking for someone to get in their car, queue up, and natural carpools form. And these are different every single day. One trip in the morning would be a different trip in the afternoon, and it's very successful. So we look at this as an industry. We say, what conditions are in place here that we can duplicate in our most congested corridor on 101? First of all, we know that you need to have a large number of commuters living and working in the same place. We do have that in the 101 corridor. About 15,000 commuters travel from Ventura to Santa Barbara and Goleta. You need convenient transportation alternatives, because there may be a situation where you might not get a ride and you need to fall back on transit. We have the Coastal Express in the 101 corridor, very good service. You need a choke point, so you need people traveling through one roadway so that you're not watering down, you don't have all these variable trips. We have that. 101 is the only way to get from Ventura to the South Coast. You need long-distance commutes. Of course, we have people traveling 30 and 40 miles, even more than that, in that corridor. HOV lanes. Good news is we will have HOV lanes on 101, but not completed until 2025. So that leads us to one area where we don't have a condition in place, and that's where we find that we need some other convenience factor and incentives that will encourage people to carpool more in the corridor. We don't have tolling either. There's no plans to add tolling to the HOV lanes in the 101 corridor. So again, that would be a financial benefit to a driver, but since that financial benefit isn't there, we want to introduce another incentive that will make it worth their while. Bottom line is real-time ride sharing, and the industry as a whole is really looking at ride sharing very closely. The federal government actually put out a specific grant for dynamic ride sharing or real-time ride sharing projects, and what that essentially is, it's a carpool matching system that happens on the fly instantaneously for single trips, rather than the online kind of system that I had mentioned, using smartphone technology. So we are very excited to embark on this project. We see it as the perfect marriage between transit and carpooling. Transit has some really great advantages. It's dependable. You know you can stop at a given stop. Carpooling has some advantages to it that I touched on. So basically, you have predictable routes. You have a way for people to basically look at a schedule of carpools. You have, with this, we have a way of financially compensating the driver. And we coordinate it very closely with transit. So in essence, what we're creating is another overlay system on top of an existing transit system, where you would have buses arriving, and then you'd have private carpools arriving. All of them have empty seats that we want to fill. Dynamic ride sharing has really successfully been implemented since about 2007. In Ireland, in Seattle, there was a project. Houston, there's a project going on right now. And the two biggest projects that have a lot of federal attention and people kind of awaiting our experiment here is both in the Bay Area and Santa Barbara. We call this project Smart Ride, and it's a partnership with the Community Environmental Council. It is funded through a federal highways grant, value pricing grant. It's 18 months. We have two phases. One is kind of pilot testing. We're kind of in just beginning that phase right now. Phase 2 is when we roll it out to the general public. We're looking at two corridors. One is the most congested corridor, of course, Ventura to Santa Barbara on 101. The other corridor is also a congested corridor, although you may not be aware of that. A lot of the City College students want to live in IV. I have no idea why that would be, but they do. And it's gotten to the point where MTD, with its great 15X service, can't actually accommodate the demand in that corridor. In some cases, they have 3 or 4 buses all at one time to pick up and meet the demand. Got some great articulated buses that are going to come down the pike, which we're excited about, but we need some help addressing this corridor. At City College, parking is a nightmare, and you have people going round and round and round trying to find a parking space. So that's the other corridor that we're picking. We hope that if this is successful, it'll be a really good traffic mitigation measure for the 101 widening project that will happen through 2025. So we have many years of construction. And eventually we hope that it will be rolled out countywide as well. So this pilot program, the way it works is it's a few minutes to a few days notice, kind of carpool matching. We want it to be cross-platform, so not just iPhones, but also Androids and Windows 7 phones. We need a method for screening users. One of the biggest concerns that we hear from individuals, especially women, is how can I know that this person is safe to ride with? So we have ways of doing that. We want people to be able to get easily to it from our website to this smartphone application. We need to reduce liability from the government side. We are very excited with the trip tracking and the VMT reduction numbers that we can generate. Most programs that we run, we have no way of actually knowing what people are actually doing. With the smartphone technology, we're able to actually track the trip. We know exactly who's carpooling with whom and at what time. Customer rating system so that there's that crowdsourcing so we can weed out the people that are not very fun to carpool with. And we want to be using social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and so forth for obvious reasons, tied in with the transit schedule as well. And then most importantly, a way that a little micropayment can be paid from the rider to the driver. Because if you've ever done a carpool, one of the most awkward conversations you're going to have is, how much do I owe you for this ride? And so this is a very agreed upon system, per mile type of charge, and we're excited about that aspect. So how it works is you register using your smartphone or the internet. Driver posts the ride 24 hours or even 30 minutes before. Rider looks through a list of rides to that given area that they're wanting to travel. They put in the request. The driver confirms the ride. Then the driver is actually kind of navigated to that individual and notified when they're approaching. They have video profiles of one another, so they know that they know that this person is a legitimate user of the system. Then they exchange PIN numbers, and this is very important because then you don't have the ability of someone to game the system, so to speak. These are real two people that are getting in the car, and then once they get in the car, the time starts ticking, the miles are tracked, and at the very end of that trip is when the payment is given from the rider to the driver. This is very much like a transit system. So we have stops along the way. You can see over here the Ventura Government Center, downtown Ventura, moving on downtown. We have a few stops. Cottage Hospital is going to be a participant, so you can see them. Also for selfish reasons, my office is also a stop. And then over by Raytheon and UCSB. This is a major undertaking. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This is cutting edge. It's a pilot program. So we're testing this. We don't know how it's going to turn out. The two major challenges are reliability and incentives. We need about 200 active users in both of the pilot corridors. We need our emergency ride home program to be more easy and less of an impact. Right now you get reimbursed through our emergency ride home program. We want a voucher system where those users of the system, if they can't get a ride, they can get a taxi or they can get a rental car immediately and no money comes out of their pocket. Also tying in with van pools that commute in the corridor. And also, by the way, I'll mention the city has a great fleet of carpoolers, and we would like to be able to help that system work and also potentially use that as a backup ride for the emergency ride home as well. Very important is overcoming safety fears, but without doing that with too many steps to screen people. What happened in Seattle is they had 1,000 people sign up for this project that they had. And because they had so many steps, screening steps, from background checks to and showing your insurance certificate, on and on, 7 people actually were qualified for the system. So we're not going down that road. But there are ways that we can help people understand that this is actually safer than most carpool arrangements because it's tracked, and we know that we know their credit card, we know who they are. So there's a lot of features that just provide that safety in itself. Incentives is going to be a very important thing. We don't want to just throw a bunch of money at this without getting some real results. We're going to be very nimble and looking at how we can offer up incentives that are meaningful but not overdoing it. Also, an incentive, a fee that the driver is willing to do the trip for, but also the rider is willing to pay, is a balance that we're trying to figure out. We have the benefit of paid parking and free carpool parking at a number of the sites that we'll be doing this pilot program with. City College, they have free carpool parking, so that's a great incentive. We also have Cottage Hospital that actually has a parking cash-out program, so someone gives up their car parking space and they get free parking. However, in downtown, there really aren't any good carpool parking incentives, and that's why we're presenting this option. And we got a clear message from the FHWA that they really wanted us looking seriously at parking policies and pricing. Next steps, I'm going to go quickly through this because we get to the bottom line, which is once we get through recruiting, beta testing, and so forth, launching to the public, the biggest hurdle that we have at this point is the incentives part, really looking at what's meaningful. I wanted to just show this to you to give you a sense. The city has historically been involved in providing rideshare incentives. On the transit side, the 10 Ride Pass program in 1999, moving through the My Ride Pass program, which now has gone away for downtown employees but still exists for city employees. On the carpooling side, there actually has been an on-street carpool program in place for many years. You probably have never heard of it. The reality is it's not really an active program, although there are 8 people that are currently using it, but they're kind of grandfathered in. But the way it works is you're excluded from the 75-minute on-street parking on a given block where you work. You pay anywhere from $20 to $50 per quarter for that permit. Truthfully, it was gamed, it was abused, and that's the reason why the city is not interested in continuing to operate that. In 1998, the commuter lot was built on Carrillo, and at that point, it was required actually that the city offer free carpool parking for commuters in that lot. We have about 18 people are using have carpool parking permits for that lot. I will say that program is not marketed. It doesn't even show up on the website anywhere in the city. When inquired, sometimes the parking staff isn't even aware of it. So there could be a lot to market that. We'd like to see that. We'd love to market it. But that just kind of gives you a backdrop of some of the incentives. Ultimately, what we would like to request, and I think our next step is to go to the operations committee, the parking operations committee, work with staff, come up with maybe some different versions or iterations of a discount parking option, maybe at the Granada Garage or a couple of the parking lots for those that participate in this pilot program. So we're not asking for an overall program for the general public. We're looking for a pilot program. We're looking at something that could be modified or changed if it's not working for the city, not working for the users. We can revisit it on a monthly basis. And the good news with this is we will not have people gaming the system because we know that they're using the system, we know where, and we can revoke that discount at any point. So we see this as a benefit to the city in terms of reducing the demand in the parking garage, getting people to stop doing the 75-minute shuffle, and at the same time encourage carpool and reducing traffic in our community. So with that, I can answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Yep. Mr. France?
Thank you, Mr. Epperson. My first question, so you've already presented to the Downtown Parking Committee. What was some of the feedback, if you could maybe condense that briefly, regarding parking incentives?
We weren't asking for anything specific, but I will say the one message that I got from a couple members was we don't want it to cost any money because they are experiencing a shortfall in their budget and they were concerned about any cash out-of-pocket kind of incentives. So that was a clear direction. That was probably the biggest thing. I don't know, Browning, if you want to pipe in as well. That was what I was left with, is we need to make sure whatever option does not have a financial impact.
Well, they were primarily concerned about providing free parking. We do have the program in the 2 commuter lots where we have free parking. So they weren't really in a position to really give a lot of feedback. The first time they heard it. So it is going to be going to the operations subcommittee, the downtown parking committee, to get their feedback, then eventually to get back before the full committee. So they really need to digest this a little bit more. It's a new concept. But when you're talking about free parking in the main downtown parking lots, that's when they start to get really nervous about that. Especially some of our lots are at capacity, and so they're really nervous about loss of inventory. So we'll be having further conversations.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I guess if I can make just a comment, it seems like there's a bit of a challenge in terms of incentives structurally with the way the committee governance structure for the city. Obviously, the downtown parking committee has to manage their budget and all of their facilities, but they also have the concern of downtown commerce, and then a side concern of their employees of downtown merchants being able to access. And we're coming at this obviously from a slightly different angle in terms of the circulation element and improving access to alternative means of transportation. And so I do hope that the Transportation Circulation Committee can continue to give feedback, or that the downtown parking can certainly see the push from a circulation element perspective for any types of incentives, hopefully free incentives. So thank you.
Mr. Chamber?
Thank you. Well, if 101's gridlocked and no one can get downtown, that's certainly a disincentive. So maybe we can think of it that way, too. I had pictured in my mind a number of spaces set aside for carpools in downtown parking lots, and I think I only recognize them when other spaces are filled, and I just kind of drive by in my single occupant car and go frazzle razzle. And so maybe I don't go downtown those times anymore when those are the only spaces empty. But if they aren't available now, I think it's something we have done before and something we could or should encourage doing again. So I'm glad to hear we're working on that. My only other comment was I was reading an article the other day, a couple years ago, written in Scientific American, talking about how to increase bicycle ridership. And they said the number one way to increase bicycle ridership is designed for women. Looking at the profile of the people who rode bikes and kind of conceiving why it was that way, why it was a majority of men riding bikes. It was safety, security, and errands and childcare responsibilities mostly fall on the women's side of the plate. So I think with a program like this too, I'm glad to see your security options in there, and any other. I think those are some of the disincentives to carpooling, is that freedom that a car allows you, something at the either end of that trip that would give you some more ability to go out and do the errands that you need to do. Thank you.
Ms. Horn.
Thank you for this presentation. It's really exciting. I wasn't quite sure I understood about the idea of transit having empty seats, and if that was your lead up to this presentation about this pilot, or if in this pilot there's room for empty seats in transit at the pickup spots.
I mentioned the empty seats just from a perspective of understanding that buses have often, sometimes they don't, in some quarters they don't at all. In fact, Ivita City College doesn't have any open seats, but this concept that there are seats you could get into, and rather than thinking in terms of what kind of vehicle it is, it's a vehicle that you can get into. You can get an empty seat in a private car for a carpool, or you can get on a bus. But instead of kind of thinking, oh, I have to take the bus or a carpool, and it becomes an integrated system. We do actually have some empty seats in the 101 corridor on the Coastal Express Limited bus that we would like to fill. And we actually see that as being kind of an integrated system, so that, again, if you arrive at a given stop, the Ventura Government Center, for example, it is served by the Coastal Express Limited. You could, maybe the bus pulls up first, and you're like, fine, I'm just going to get on the bus. Oh, if not, maybe I'll grab a carpool. So we're not pitting the two against each other, but we're just seeing this is an integrated system. We're increasing the convenience, really, for both of those. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, you did. And at the other end where people get off and they're not right at their workplace or whatever, is there any way for them to get further to the next little leg to their workspace?
What I would envision, I guess one of the advantages with the Smart Ride system is that even though there's given stops, your destination could be really anywhere the driver's willing to take you. So that last mile problem that sometimes you have with transit is less of an issue than with the Smart Ride system. But if you're planning on getting somewhere by carpool and then you end up taking the bus, then you are kind of left figuring out how you're going to take care of that last leg.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman-Gray?
Well, I think it's a great idea. I know it has a lot of work to get it going, but I think I'm so glad you came to us and presented this to us tonight. Couple of things, you're talking about, the 101 corridor. As we all know, it's very congested all the way from Ventura to Santa Barbara. At the very end of the presentation, you mentioned, the transit incentives that we used to have downtown. And I work in a retail company that has about 40 employees downtown. And I've been with them since the 99 when we had the 10-ride bus pass program. And I have employees that used to use that and used to ride the bus from Carpinteria and use that. And they're back to using their cars now because that went away. And so, I think this is a great idea. Maybe we'll supplant it. But I think, we had a good system in place to help downtown employees get downtown without using their car, and it went away. And I know there was reasons why it went away. There was mitigations, and the Granada Garage money went and took that away to help support the mitigation of Granada Garage. But it was a program that worked. It was so simple. It was just you got a little thing for 10 rides. Once it was punched, you could turn it in and get 10 more as long as you proved your work downtown. So I'm not saying this is not a good thing. I think this is a very good, but I feel that we had a good thing in one way that kind of went away. Downtown sales tax increased a lot this last year, and as you walk down State Street, there's a lot of new businesses. It's a lot of new employees that are now trying to get downtown. So we need this, the program you're working on, I think will help in that area. But I think that what we had before also helped too. So I'd like to look back to see if there's any way of whatever funding we are to do this, maybe some of that funding can go back to help with the MTD, with the 10-ride bus program that we had. And that's really it. I mean, I think this is a great program, and I'm looking forward to see how it works. And I definitely know between IV and City College, they have a great incentive because they pay for it through their going to school. They pay for that, and that's why there's so many riders. If we didn't have that, they'd be driving their cars back and forth. So I guess I'm saying the downtown employees don't have that incentive, and this was their incentive before to get out of the car, and that kind of went away. Thank you.
Just to respond to that, because Traffic Solutions was very disappointed that program went away as well. We felt that was a really great program. It was great that transit service was enhanced. We wanted to see that too. But it's a shame that program doesn't exist anymore, because I think there's a place for both the incentive side and increasing transit. Really, when you do the two together is when you have the biggest bang for the buck. So.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, I have one last quick comment. Just to kind of put a note out there, it is interesting that the downtown parking garages, about a year ago, took credit cards and changed the technology to start taking credit cards. I know at UCSB, the parking garages take credit cards. And it just is kind of note, my partner takes the bus often to commute to work. And in the morning, she'll need to find $1.75 sometimes. And it just is of note that's a disincentive, right? And actually the Smart Ride would actually allow kind of electronic payment that's automated, because that is a disincentive sometimes, just like that carpool conversation of, oh, how much do I need to pitch in after a week of carpooling? That clearly, parking providers have identified as a disincentive that exists on the flip side as well.
Good point.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Horn.
I have one more little question, which is, say someone wanted to drive from Fillmore, who works in Santa Barbara, they wanted to drive from Fillmore to the government center. I'm thinking of a coworker, and park there. Have you picked places that have plenty of parking for the people that are going to need to park all day until they get back?
Yeah, and in fact, the reason we picked the stops that I showed up there, the Government Center, the Ventura Government Center, and downtown is, first of all, the Coastal Express serves those locations, and there's ample parking in those locations.
Great, thanks.
So I had a couple things. One, I'm crushed that those of us in the dark ages still using BlackBerries will be left out in the cold, but we can use Google Transit on our and just take the bus, I suppose. So that's a bummer. But for safety, I'm glad, obviously, and you would have to, liability-wise, to make it so that there are safety checks in the system so that, people will actually feel comfortable doing this, using this program. You keep mentioning that there's no way, like someone could get a bad rating or we're tracking or whatever. Who is actually watching that happen? And I guess I'm wondering what the kind of response time, or who responds if something, is there like an automatic little press this button to have the cops track you down so that you're not being stalked away or whatever. So that's just what I'm wondering of, who's actually following that, if it is safe.
Well, to answer your first question, Android technology is going to be compatible with Android technology. So that's a BlackBerry product, or
no,
isn't it?
Nope.
No. See, I'm
nope.
an iPhone user.
Yeah.
The second question is the crowdsourcing is very similar to what you'd have on eBay or whatever. The way it works is if you don't want to ever be matched up with that person again, you rate them a 1 star, and they don't show up on anymore. And the other thing, too, is that Avago is the software that we're using for this. They're flagged when a user is rated low, and if it repeats itself, they have a way of just getting the person out of the system altogether. You brought up a really interesting concept, though, this idea that it's like this kind of emergency button that you would say, abort, I need help. I'll have to ask Avago about that if they've ever thought of something like that. I would imagine the technology is possible to make something like that happen, but I have no idea. It's the way the system is set up now, there is not that possibility.
Yeah, I mean, not to be too dark about it, but if something went down before you got the chance to rate them, when you got off at your destination, of just how fast is there some type of response? Obviously, if you've got a phone and you're dealing with that, dialing 911 is obviously an option, but just so that feedback gets into the system in case it's we need to end this trip, if that kind of feedback can be watched.
Yeah, I will definitely follow up on that.
Cool. Any other questions? All right. Well, we appreciate the report and look forward to hearing kind of what comes out of downtown parking, and as we go forward, maybe we can think about ways that we can, and we appreciate your input of ways you think that the city could help incentivize the program. So,
thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right. So next, so first we can take up the review of January, February, and March MTD monthly reports and the third quarter 2012 report. It's third quarter 2012 already. That's weird.
Again, this is an informational item from the committee. We can answer any questions that the committee might have, or just move on to the next item.
Is the mic on?
It's not.
There we go.
Okay. Chair Blackerby and committee members, I'm David Damiano with NTD. Steve Moss is not available to be here tonight to go over the reports, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to report them back to him.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Kaufman-Gray.
Just a couple of comments. I was very pleased to see the increase in ridership, especially in February and March for the downtown shuttle and the waterfront. And then I started thinking, isn't this also the time we started having some cruise ships? And I was looking at the increase, and it looked like that increase might be a result of the cruise ships that arrived in those periods.
Actually, I can answer that question. Okay. It's a combination of the two. There were some additional shuttles that Princess Cruise Line paid for to have the additional service, which allowed more capacity. But overall, retail is picking up downtown, as you mentioned earlier, so we're seeing a lot more activity on the shuttles.
Okay. Other question, the crosstown, I notice, is still continuing to lag over last year. Are you looking at any marketing to try to get ridership up on that route?
I can answer that one as well. Our marketing budget is almost zero this year, and when we do our presentation next, you'll see some of the financial constraints we have. But also, there's been some reduction in service, and when you have a reduction in service, you obviously have less capacity, so ridership declines.
Okay. And third, when I saw the presentation yesterday for committee members about the 2013 city budget, and it was mentioned about the redevelopment agency going away, or has gone away. It's not going away, it went away. And it mentioned that there's some funds that I didn't realize that when Paseo Nuevo was built, that MTD gets some funds to mitigate. Is that going to be affecting a lot of these services that we have, like the downtown shuttle?
Well, that is an item that will be discussed at our board meeting on Tuesday morning, but I think Browning might be able to answer that a little bit better than I.
Yeah, it was like a small, like 60,000. I mean,
well, actually, it's not given direct to MD. We have the contract for the downtown waterfront shuttle service and the 2 commuter lots. Part of the funding for that service is redevelopment agency funds, or was RDA funds, in the tune of $300,000. And I just had our budget presentation with the city council this afternoon where we discussed that, and we have a lot more conversation needs to occur on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Any other questions? Mr. Tabor?
Just quickly, thank you for the reports. I think in my mind, the crosstown shuttle is related a little bit more to employment rates downtown. So as employment picks up, businesses picks up downtown, I think we should see some more use of the Coda commuter lot and a little bit more use of that crosstown shuttle. And I think I remember, too, a link between ridership and the other shuttles and the weather patterns. We did have a rather glorious February and March this year, where we had a very misty and Seattle-y February and March last year. So that could have something to do with the ridership peaking up a little bit this year, too. So
it could be.
Thanks.
And actually, my colleague Cynthia, who will be sharing the next presentation with me, actually tracks the weather and makes a correlation between that and ridership. So.
Okay, we have a question from our Planning Commission liaison. If you can come up to the mic, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Deborah Schwartz, Planning Commission. Mr. Damiano, I was interested in the reference to the Princess Cruise subsidy of some of our downtown shuttle activity. Are there any more details maybe you could share about that?
Actually, I may have misspoke. It used to be Princess, but now Cynthia will tell you the other funding source.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Bosch. I'm also with MTD, Assistant Planning Manager. When the cruise lines first started coming to Santa Barbara, the Waterfront District was able to negotiate with them to pay for extra shuttle service to accommodate their passengers. So over the first couple of visits, we put out every shuttle we had to serve those passengers, and it was quite successful. Since then, the cruise line decided that they didn't want to pay for any extra shuttle service. They thought that we in Santa Barbara should just cater to them at our own expense. And so the waterfront district realized that that would be a big problem, getting the passengers from the sea landing to downtown, which is where most of them seem to want to go. So waterfront district stepped up, and they have been funding 3 extra shuttles and an extra shuttle supervisor to keep everything running smoothly for the visits over the past year or so. And as far as I know, they plan to continue doing that for the Princess visits. There are a couple of other cruise lines that are visiting who either have enough fewer passengers that we don't need the extra service, or in the case of, I think it's called the Crystal Symphony, I guess it's a higher end ship, and they hire their own buses to shuttle their passengers between the sea landing and the courthouse.
Well, with a name like Crystal Symphony,
yeah,
I would think.
If I just may add one other comment regarding the cruise ships. Any resources that are available to actually increase capacity would be great, because I was out there, it was a couple of Fridays ago, there was one of the Princess, I think it was the Princess Sapphire was here, and I saw a queue of 90 people waiting to get on a shuttle. So anything we can do would be great. Thank you.
All right. And I just had a question about this report. We know that we get quarterly reports. It says on the agenda, third quarter 2012 report. How do our quarters work? If it's March.
Fiscal year.
Okay. So it's third quarter 2011-12. Okay. Got it. I was like, what time of year is it? Okay, great. Any other questions about that report? Okay. Don't go far, MTD, because the next, the final agenda item is MTD service changes. So I think Cynthia and Dave are got a PowerPoint here. We've also, just so everybody knows, have received a couple of written public comment regarding the Line 22, one from the Tobes Group and one from the Riviera Association, both obviously in opposition to cancellation of the route, but I can go over some of those comments once we get the report.
Okay. Once again, I'm Cynthia Bosch, Assistant Planning Manager at MTD, and David Damiano, who has a long, convoluted title that's somehow superior to mine, is also here. So we're here tonight to talk to you about our proposed service changes for our next schedule year, essentially. We usually make our service changes at the beginning of the school year, which is the end of August, and so we're making plans for those changes now. David wants to say a thing.
Sorry, you've probably heard me say this about 100 times already, but in one of the slides that was in the previous presentation, it looked like transit utilization in Santa Barbara County was quite low percentage-wise, but that was taking the entire county into consideration. MTD actually carries approximately 8 million passenger trips per year, which is quite impressive. We're recognized nationally as a transit-intensive community, which is great. And the ridership you see, we have a ridership area of about 200,000. And that number of 8 million passenger trips is more equivalent of what you'd see in a community of a population of 1 million. So people are really utilizing transit on the South Coast, and I apologize for Cynthia for interrupting her.
So anyway, we're just here tonight to tell you about the proposed service changes for the coming year. And just as a little bit of background, mostly what's driving these changes is, not surprisingly, budgets. We're looking at a projected deficit of $900,000 for the next fiscal year. This projection was made before we saw that sales tax revenues are starting to increase a little bit, so it's not quite as bad as that currently, but the sales tax increase isn't enough to make up that entire shortfall. And then it just escalates and snowballs in future years. And one of the big factors here is that the fuel contract that we've had for the last 3 years expires at the end of May. And Jerry has been scrambling to negotiate a new diesel fuel contract at the best price that he can, but it's almost certainly going to be at least $1 a gallon more than we've been paying. And that's a huge portion of our operating budget right there. In addition, the collective bargaining agreement expires at the end of June. We'll be renegotiating with our drivers and supervisors on their contracts. So we're looking at some constraints. And yeah, like everyone else. So our board is sort of faced with the choice of reducing transit service or dipping into reserves to continue the service that we currently have. My guess is that they'll end up settling on some combination of those choices, but we don't know yet. And they will be considering most of these proposals at their meeting this coming Tuesday at 8:30 at MTD. Or I guess it's actually a time certain, 9 o'clock. Anyway, so just to run through this quickly, kind of the biggest thing that drove our service changes this year was the need to fix lines 6 and 11. They've had those two routes, which run the State and Hollister corridor between downtown and Old Town Goleta, have had schedule adherence issues for years, and we've tried a lot of different tweaks to try to fix it, and those tweaks haven't gone far enough. So we wanted to do a big fix this year. In order to do that, because we don't have money to spend on putting additional service out there, we're looking at where we could trim other services to balance the budget, essentially. So the service changes this year are really kind of a reallocation of resources to try to make the best use of the resources that we have. So quickly, the proposals that we have here concern the lines 6 and 11, and also lines 23 and 25, which serve the Winchester Canyon and Elwood areas, respectively. Lines 1 and 2, which serve the east side and west side of Santa Barbara. Line 22, which serves the Old Mission, the Natural History Museum, El Encanto, and the Botanic Garden on weekends. And Line 15X and a couple of the booster buses. I'm not going to get into detail on the 15X and the booster buses, so I'll just explain that right now. As Kent was telling you earlier, ridership on the 15X is so huge that we couldn't possibly throw enough buses at that route. It's just amazing. So currently there's one trip in the middle of the day where the driver was getting a break. Our scheduler is adjusting the schedules to move that break to a different part of the day so that line 15X service is continuous throughout the day. It's a minor tweak to just get us a little bit more out there at the times when we need it. On the boosters, those are buses that primarily serve San Marcos High School and Dos Pueblos High School. The buses, those buses are currently way overloaded, mostly standing loads all the time, and we just need more buses out there to accommodate the numbers of students who want to ride. I should say, though, that although they primarily serve the schools, they are buses that are open for anyone to use. So going right on to the 6 and 11, as I said before, our biggest priority was trying to adjust these routes so that they could stay on schedule. We've been hearing for years from the drivers and from the public that the bus is always late, or it's just been a problem. And as I said, we've tried to tweak it, and the tweaks haven't gone far enough. They haven't completely fixed it. So this year we wanted to do a major fix, and in order to fix the routes, they needed to have more time to run their schedules. That's partly because of traffic congestion, partly because passenger loads It just takes more time to load more people on and off the bus. We got everybody on staff out there doing surveys this past fall, including right up to the general manager. We were out there riding buses, counting passengers, timing the route to see where the bottlenecks were, where the large passenger loads were, et cetera, gathering as much data as we could. And what we came up with as the best solution for this route was to interline line 6 and 11. And what that means is that the routes are connected. So line 6 goes out State and Hollister corridor through Old Town Goleta to the Camino Real Marketplace, and then it will become a line 11 and circle around through Isla Vista to UCSB and then return to downtown Santa Barbara again via the Hollister and State corridor. And the reverse would happen as well, where the 11 will become a 6. And to do that, we needed to detach the lines 23 and 25 from those routes. I'll show you a map in a minute, which might help explain this, but I couldn't fit it all on one screen. So the advantages of this were that by doing it this way, the 6 and 11 will stay on schedule. A side effect is that it'll result in more service along El Colegio, which is where we have some of our highest overloads right now. The line 24X especially routinely has to bypass 20 or 30 people at a bus stop. It's just huge numbers of people wanting to ride the bus out there. So this will get a little bit more bus service in that high ridership area. It'll keep the buses spaced more evenly on the, again, what we call the corridor between Old Town and downtown Santa Barbara. And in our surveys, we found that the vast majority of the Line 23 and Line 25 passengers are riding between UCSB and the Camino Real Marketplace. Only a small portion of them, about a third of the passengers, are riding to either Winchester or Elwood areas. And it's a more efficient use of our resources in that in order to make the buses run on time and keep the routes as they are, it would have cost us an extra 4 hours of service per day. And you multiply that over 300 and some odd days a year, and it ends up being many thousands of dollars that we're saving by doing it this way. The downsides are that those 23 and 25 passengers who do live out beyond the Camino Real Marketplace will have to transfer between buses. We've timed the transfers so none of them should ever have to wait more than a few minutes to make that connection, and we've designed the routes so that they will often not have to cross the street. Sometimes they will, but as much as possible we'll make it that it'll be the same bus stop. And currently line 25 goes from UCSB up Los Carneros and then out Hollister. As it goes up Los Carneros, it deviates into the Stork Student Family Housing complex, and there's a bus stop in there. By removing the line 25 from that section of the route, there will no longer be service to that bus stop. It is only a quarter-mile walk from there down to El Colegio to catch the bus, which is no farther than many people in our service area have to walk to catch a bus. So. And again, there's abundant service along El Colegio for them to catch. So here's the map. Currently, as I said, line 11 comes out to UCSB, and at that point, currently it becomes either a line 23 and continues along El Colegio and Stork, and then goes out. Line 23 is the blue line up there. And the line 25 goes from UCSB and goes up Los Carneros and then out. And the line 11 buses alternate between becoming either a line 23 or a line 25 from UCSB. With the change, all line 11s will continue through UCSB out along El Colegio and up to Stork, and then they will become line 6 and return to town. And vice versa. Line 6 will come out here and become a line 11, go back through UCSB. So the 25 and 23 will alternate routes, and what so say a 23, right here someone transfers to that, they're going to come out around through the canyon area, it'll come in as a 25 and come here to this transfer point, then it'll loop back around the Camino Real Marketplace and go out again as a 25, come in as a 23, hit the transfer point, and loop back around, go out as a 23 again. So it'll do that all day long. it as clear as mud, probably. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions about that, but unless you're a regular user of those routes, it's probably not going to make a ton of sense.
This would also mean, too, that whatever 6 or 11 you got on, you still get to the airport.
Yes.
Right, because now it's just the 11?
Right, well, only 11 serves the airport.
Right, exactly.
But if you, for instance, were up here at Goleta City Hall and you wanted to get to the airport, you could catch a line 6 and it would come around and eventually get over there.
So that's another selling point.
Yeah, there you go. What else?
Madam Chair, I have a brief question. Cynthia, are there any changes or amenities that will happen in order to make that transfer point? Is there any kind of changes at the actual bus stop there on Stork?
I don't believe we have anything planned at the moment. I believe it's already sheltered there.
Not on the Rusty side.
Oh, okay. It's sheltered on the Marketplace side of the street, apparently not on the other side of the street. That's another thing MTD currently doesn't have a lot of funding for. We mostly get shelters from developments that are conditioned to provide upgraded bus stops. And CDBG grants, which, by the way, off topic, I wanted to let the East Side Walks folks know that one of the bus stops that they were most concerned about, which is on Salinas at Cacique, was approved for a community development block grant upgrade for next year. So they should be happy to hear that.
And it includes shelter and lighting.
Yeah, wheelchair accessible.
Do you want to continue?
Yeah, I want to continue.
We'll
I'll continue,
Sorry.
and then we'll take questions. Next one to talk about are the lines 1 and 2, which again serve west and east sides of Santa Barbara. Again, we did extensive surveying of these routes a few months ago. And again, what's primarily driving this proposed change is budget shortfalls. Last year, we reduced service on the 1 and 2 in the mornings. We switched from 10-minute headways to 15-minute headways during morning peak. This year, we're proposing to do the same in the afternoon peak. We're also tweaking the schedules a little bit because Line 2 currently has more time than it needs to do its entire route. Line 1 has a hard time meeting its schedule. So we're putting a little more time on the Line 1, a little less time on the Line 2, and shifting things so that both routes will make better connections with other lines at the transit center. Line 22 serves between downtown, goes along Garden Street, goes up to the Mission, the Natural History Museum, El Encanto, and on the weekends it goes to the Botanic Garden. It has had the lowest ridership in MTD's system for many years. It was proposed for elimination last year, and the board decided to just reduce the service, so they cut it down to what we consider pretty much the bare minimum. And it's not surprisingly that didn't make ridership increase. It's hard to justify continuing to run this bus when there are so many other routes out there that we just can't put enough buses out there to serve the people who want to ride. So it's kind of about using our resources as effectively as we can. Yes.
And in regard to the Line 22, we had a lot of community members, the Mission, Natural History Museum, Botanic Garden, all agreed to aggressively market the service, and some did not. But overall, the ridership did not increase dramatically. So, we hear frequently, market it, and when you do, people still don't come.
It's one of those routes that everybody loves, including us. We don't want to see it go away either, but we're kind of between a rock and a hard place. everybody loves knowing that there is a bus in their neighborhood just in case they ever need it. But the reality is that they're not riding it currently. So, and this chart just shows the passengers per hour for all of our routes for the last fiscal year. You can see line 22 right here is the lowest at 13.1 passengers per hour. You can compare that with lines such as line 1 at 50, line 16 at 103 passengers per hour. Line 16 is the City College shuttle between the Transit Center and City College. It's a very efficient route.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, it's the only one you make a buck on.
No, really, lines 6 and 11, 1 and 2, 17, 24X. Those are all very, very good routes. They all do well. A side effect of eliminating line 22, if that happens, is that currently line 22 and the line 5 are run by the same bus on weekends. So a bus will go out and do line 22, and then it'll go do a line 5, and then it'll go do line 22. And together, that's a 2-hour round trip. But the 22 portion of it is 45 minutes, the line 5 portion of it is an hour and 15 minutes. If the 22 goes away, we just have one bus out there doing round trips on the line 5, and they'll be an hour and 15 minutes long. So it makes the line 5, the time between buses on the line 5 will go from an hour to an hour and 15 minutes if the line 22 goes away.
And that's just on weekends?
That's just on weekends.
Okay.
During the week, the 22 is connected with other things.
Okay, but the 5 on weekdays will stay the same?
Correct.
And what are those headways?
I think it's an hour. Do we have a book? I don't have it.
Okay.
Yeah. And I believe that's it. So be happy to take questions.
Madam Chair, just before the committee does, just want to remind the committee on lines 1 and 2 that that is a mitigation, the enhanced service, the 10-minute headway for the afternoon peak hour as well as AM peak hour is a mitigation measure for the Granada Garage, one of the ways we were meeting that mitigation requirement. So the direct Measure A recipient funding that MTD is getting was based on the amount of money we're giving towards that service. So the committee just has a perspective of that. So if they eliminate the PM peak hour service, I am not sure we will be meeting our afternoon trip mitigation requirement.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of when I saw 1 and 2, right? Because we get this quarterly report about line 1 and 2 enhancement for traffic mitigation for the Granada Garage, which is still standing and still needs mitigating more and more each day. I guess what I'm wondering is how does MTD, obviously you need to make cuts to some of your many lines. How does it, for the 1 and 2, if there is that agreement, I know it's in a little different method of getting the money to MTD now with Measure A, but kind of how is that okay?
David will answer that one.
Okay. Chair Blackerby. Yeah. Part of what we're seeing is, now that we are a direct recipient of Measure A funds, as sales tax revenues have declined, the amount of money that we anticipated for Measure A has also declined. So, I don't know, Browning, if you want to elaborate on that or not.
Well, I mean, just to clarify, yeah, and we've lost Measure A funds too to do what the city needs to do, but the intent of mitigating, there's a EIR for a reason, right, on the Granada Garage, that's something that was agreed upon, and no matter what the sales tax picture looks like, it's still a very real thing that we're required to do. So,
and Chair Blackerby, if this committee would like to make comment to our board for Tuesday's meeting, we'd be happy to receive that.
Okay, Browning, did you have anything else?
Well, he is correct in terms of the sales tax revenue is down. But last year we did see a little bit more coming in than what SBCAG projected, and projecting a little bit more. But that was a risk that MTD was willing to take when they became a direct recipient, suffer the loss from the revenues down, but also reap the benefit when sales tax were strong too. So that was kind of a trade-off, because that they took, so they wouldn't be at the mercy of the city, whether or not they would give them a cost of living adjustment on an annual basis. So that's kind of how that all worked out.
Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Yeah. Mr. Table?
Well, I thought there was a magic number on the back of our quarterly report. It says that Granada Garage Project was generating 985 average daily trips and 229 peak hour trips. And for each month in the third quarter, we were exceeding ridership in both the weekday and the peak hour, so we were okay. So I guess the issue is, as long as that magic number doesn't drop below 985 or 229, we will continue to be okay in that regard. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I had another, just something, just so that the public knows, and I'm sure that you guys have seen this, and it looks like these letters went to the MTD board from the Riviera Association and the Tobes Group with reference to line 22, and discussion about the, I hate reading when it says the El Encanto Hotel. El Encanto Hotel, allegedly reopening later this year, talking about employees that will, the people that work there, and in theory, people who might be staying there, would be using that corridor. The other thing that is mentioned is the new housing project for Cottage Hospital employees, Bella Riviera, on the former St. Francis grounds, bringing many new residents to the area. I think this listed how many? 115 new residential units, 81 of which are designated affordable. And those are in the process of being, some are in escrow right now. I guess I understand. I hate it because we all root for the line 22. We love it. When service goes away, as it seems like this line is going to, and we've tried to keep it from happening, does it ever come back? We're experiencing this interesting recession where we're going through and we're cutting service and we're increasing, time between buses. But if the demand shows up in this, there's no way to know, right? Once it's gone. I guess what I'm wondering is if these things, when these projects come and they're to fruition, is there a way that, maybe employer surveys or whatever to see that there could be a need again and could, open the line back up? I don't know how transit districts do things like that, if they do. So, yeah.
Chair Blackerby, the El Encanto, when it was previously open, we were serving that we were hoping employees, and we actually timed our schedules to go with the employees, and it didn't happen. There was not very much ridership. And as far as the former St. Francis site, the Cottage Hospital housing, they are providing their own shuttle for their residents. So I don't know that we
from work, you mean?
Yeah, and to downtown.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
One other thing in terms of the El Encanto Hotel, as part of a condition of approval for the hotel, they were required to have a bus pass program. So I'm not really sure how this is going to play in that.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is there any type of precedent for service if there is some type of need from a tourist destination or whatever to help offset the cost of a line?
Well, when resources become available, we actually increase service, which yeah, we have an interesting graph that I'd be happy to email to you that shows, as our resources increased, the direct level of service increased. So if there's a funding source available, sure, we would love to provide service. That's what we do.
But there's precedent for kind of a public-private partnership type thing on.
Not so much here in Santa Barbara, but there has been in other cities.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah, Mr. Tabor.
Thank you. We've had some discussion about bigger buses to accommodate the larger crowds that need to get from here and there. Is there any thought about smaller buses or even vans for those lines that have fewer than the ideal number of people?
Actually, the cost of operating a small bus is almost or about the same as a large bus. It's mostly the operator that is the larger cost, and there is some fuel economy savings with the smaller buses, but not substantial. One area that we are likely to see some savings is we did a demonstration of an articulated bus for, what was it, about 2 weeks, Cynthia? Yeah, two or 3 weeks. And it was very well received. And we used it on our 15X, where we're currently leaving people behind. We are in the process to go out to bid to purchase 3 of the articulated buses, which will help save some of the operating costs, because we don't have to have 4 drivers in a row. We can maybe have 2. But yeah, to answer your question, the smaller buses are not a substantial savings.
Well, I guess I have 2 friends that anytime someone mentions bus service, they both get upset and talk about empty buses driving all over town and wasting taxpayers' money. So at least they'll be happy.
Yeah, this one?
Hearing that you leave people behind on the El Clillo route, was that? What happens to those people when they have appointments other places or whatever, and they're waiting for a bus?
I think usually they catch the next bus that comes along, which in that corridor is fortunately, there are a lot of buses. There's a lot of different routes that serve that street. So usually there's another bus coming in the next 10 or 15 minutes at the latest. But yeah, that's a hard part about transit, and that's something that we've seen on the 15X too. And we get these students writing irate letters to us because they looked in the bus book and they saw that there was going to be a bus out there at 7:30, and they were there along with 200 other people, and they weren't able to get on the bus, and then they missed their class or they're late for their test or whatever, and without the budget to put enough buses out there, there's not really a lot we can do about it, unfortunately.
And are those subsidized by student fees, so that there's nobody paying a ticket for a bus, so there's no way to increase the
all the students
income?
At both City College and UCSB pay for bus passes as part of their registration fees.
Okay. So there's no possible increase in fees if there are more passengers.
If I may elaborate on that a little bit. Their fees are directly related to our cash fare. So if we were to raise our cash fare, which is not in the imminent future, their fees would be raised as well.
Okay. And the fare now is what?
$1.75 is the adult cash fare.
Okay, great. Thank you. And one other question, just what happens when the summer comes, and I know this isn't going into effect, or you're planning on August and September starting this, but what happens to the bus situation from campus when a lot of the students from City College and UCSB are not there in the summer?
We adjust our schedules in the summer. We run quite a bit less service on, for instance, line 15X in the summer. It goes from 3 or 4 buses at a time during the school year to only 1 bus in the summer on that route. Similarly, line 24X, which is an express between UCSB and downtown Santa Barbara, reduces service when the schools are out of session. Line 16 goes away. We try to take all of those things into account in the scheduling.
Try to get all your staff to go on vacation during those times too.
I think the drivers are encouraged to take their vacations during that time.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Kaufman-Gray?
Just a couple of comments. I'm really concerned about the 1 and 2, and because the city does have an agreement with the Granada Garage for the mitigation for that was to increase the bus service. And I just hope that the MTD board decides not to go this route, because I really think that it's just going against what the original proposal was to build the Granada Garage, was to mitigate people to ride the bus more. And even though right now we're ahead of the figures of the baseline, I really think that that was how we decided it was those intervals, and I hope that we don't go that direction, is changing those times. The other is the line 22. I understand ridership is really low. You look at the chart, it's the lowest route. My concern isn't so much the elimination, but we just the city approved the El Encanto Hotel based on a mitigation for their employees to get free bus passes to get to work. So if the line isn't there, how can that hotel legally be going forward with that mitigation not there, unless we're going to ask the hotel to have their own van to take people down to the transit center? This is something I think the city needs to look at, because we have a project, as it said, December 2012, it's going to open. We see letters here from the Riviera Park Association afraid that the employees might be parking on their property when it's for those businesses. So, I mean, this is really more of a city question, I guess. It's really not, I agree with you why you're doing this, but I just think the city needs to look into, this whole mitigation for the employees when they open the El Encanto. And I don't know where you would go with that. I mean, because it's approved, but if all of a sudden that line isn't there anymore for the hotel, they're going to give out these bus passes, but what are you going to do? Go to the transit center and hike up the hill? So, I mean, I think this needs to be looked at seriously. I don't know what area the city should do it, but, maybe instead of giving bus passes, maybe put that money towards their own little shuttle van for employees to get from the transit station to, whatever their shifts are. Because hotels run 24 hours a day, so employees have night shifts for that, too. So anyway, that's just my open comment. I don't know a solution for this, but it's a concern, because we did approve this hotel based on one of those mitigations.
Yeah. Obviously, we're going to have to take a look at that. The hotel project was approved, 4 or 5 years ago? It's been a while, so if it had been remodeled sooner, then the bus pass program would have been in, and maybe they would have a different ridership scenario than there currently is. So it's really hard to say. I'll have to get together with the transportation planning staff and the community development department staff to see exactly what could be done, if anything, to address that mitigation requirement. But obviously, if they don't meet that, it would have to go back before the planning commission.
Because what they call it, Bella Vista, what do they call it? Bella Vista,
Bella
the
Riviera.
cottage, the cottage thing. We did ask them to do shuttles, and that's what they're doing. So maybe that's something that's going to have to be done with the hotel, too.
Planning Commissioner Schwartz can maybe shed some light.
I wish I could shed light. What I wanted to comment on and also suggest is that we have a number of, I think, overlapping pressures.
Turn the mic on.
Mic's not on.
I wish I could shed light and put the green light on. What I wanted to share a thought and possibly suggestion, because I think there are going to be some competing pressures with the potential elimination of 22 in that area. I'm already receiving complaints from residents on the Riviera that their residential areas are becoming congested with daytime auto parkers who work in the Riviera Park area. So then when the El Encanto comes online, and if there are not alternative means of transportation for employees primarily, I think we're going to further impact that congestion, especially along APS. You can see right there at the park La Swen. It's already full every day. I traverse that fairly regularly, and I see that it's filled up every single day with workers from the Riviera Park complex. And so I would suggest that we get right on the issue of the El Encanto mitigation because I don't know, I'm not sure what the resolution is to that, but I'd like us to kind of brainstorm that with them. Lastly, I'll just say in terms of whether or not there's any opportunity to sit down with the Tobes Group and any other major interested party, perhaps we want to explore forging a private-public partnership, which many cities do, and I think we're, quite frankly, a little behind the curve on that. And since we do have financial constraints, I think we need to ask the private sector to step up and step in to be a good corporate citizen and help in this way. And so, gosh, if cruise ships can help subsidize shuttles going from the beach area up to downtown for our economic interests, I think that we certainly can ask the Tobes Group and others in the area, Orient Express, to sit at the table again and explain our current constraints and what we're facing in a very short-term situation. I don't know if we can stave off the decision about the 22 until we have some of these discussions, but I would certainly ask that we make every effort to do that. Thank you.
Mr. Prince?
Thank you. So I appreciate the comment made by our liaison, our planning commissioner, Schwartz. I actually was going to ask about the 22 because I used to live in Mission Canyon, and especially around the holidays when the lights come up, everyone's got their houses lit up with Christmas lights. All the shuttles come through, the trolleys, right? And just looking at the description of the route, you have the Mission, the Natural History Museum, the Botanic Garden, of course, also the access to that complex up on the Riviera. The public-private partnership, or even some type of public-run service that could be at a higher cost, that would have involvement. Because I'm kind of hearing that there was a push for these attractions to promote the route, and certainly the onus was not on them. They wouldn't suffer the consequences if MTD suffered the consequences of that route not being attractive enough for riders. That area is very challenging, but certainly maybe some solution if 22 is to fold, maybe there's some solution that these stakeholders are more actively involved with and have a financial commitment to. I have a question, Ms. Bosch, you mentioned on line 22 previously when lead times were cut down. Basically, obviously that doesn't necessarily compress ridership, often it dissuades riders. What is the likely implication on ridership of reducing the headways for the 1 and 2 from 10 to 15 minutes in the afternoon?
One of the reasons that we chose those routes for trimming was that currently they have more service than any other routes in our system. And because we went through every single route in our system and looked at their peak hours, how their total ridership compared to the total number of seats available. And believe it or not, on lines 1 and 2, they had the most excess capacity. Again, because they're currently so frequent. And so when it came time, when we were told that we had to look for some cuts, it seemed logical to look there.
And so the feeling is that there'll be some compression of ridership.
Yes.
So more riders will take the 15-minute route. All right. Last comment. And again, I really I want to apologize because I know very little bit about managing a very large transportation system. And this comment is going to probably come off as a little bit cavalier. But I'm interested, both between UCSB, but especially with Santa Barbara City College, when how frequently contracts are discussed. Because if contracts, in terms of the student fees for MTD service, are tied to the adult fare, there's no elasticity then of ridership, which obviously is kind of hard to gauge. But I'm wondering if there's some type of bargaining chip with City College.
Mr. France, I would encourage you to call Jerry Estrada. He's our controller. He's the one who manages the contracts for both City College and UCSB. So possibly he could shed some light on that question.
I kind of recall the last time MTD did the fare increase, it wasn't an automatic raise for City College. It had to go before the election of the students.
Yes.
You know, so that's
Same
how
for UCSB, I think.
I think UCSB as well. So it's not automatically it's going to jump up. So it would be an election of the students. They have to basically approve a fare increase. But I can tell you, as a parent of a City College student, those lines are heavily used, and my child actually has to run to catch the bus when she gets out of class if she wants to catch it. Otherwise, she's going to get left at the curb because of the overcrowding. And I'm sure the other buses are the same way.
And last question there. When I know we did the trial, or at least the demonstration of the articulated bus, is there a time set for maybe a next school year or maybe sometime sooner for the use of the articulated bus?
Well, I believe they're working on getting a bid out to, well, I'll let David speak to that.
We are ideally trying to get them in for the next school year. There's some what's called piggyback options out there, where there's other agencies that are buying the same vehicle that we can just add onto, and it makes the process much faster. But we won't know that for sure until we finish going through the request for proposals.
Okay. And one last comment I would put out there, and I know this is not a timely comment because of lack of funds, but as a formerly transit dependent and an occasional transit user now, one thing that frequently is frustrating is just confusion trying new routes. And I don't know, there's a company that magically has this inexpensively available, and those of us who have phones now, we're fortunate to be able to use Google Transit. But if there is in the future for hubs like the proposed on Stork, certainly at UCSB, perhaps at City College, and certainly outside the transit center, some type of LCD display that can say what lines are coming and what the projected headway is. If in the future that becomes easily available, I just think that might be a tool, and that's my 2 cents.
Well, sure. I think David knows more details on that, but we actually are in the process of purchasing, I think it's new radios for our entire fleet, and those radios will be GPS enabled, which means that we will also be able to get what's called automatic vehicle locator technology in our system. So eventually we'll be able to have a system where someone with a smartphone can log on to see where their bus is, how far away it is from their bus stop. They could get online, they could get on their phone. Yeah. And yes, eventually we'd love to have signs at the major bus stops that indicate which buses are approaching.
And that's great. Oh, sorry.
We are also in the process of going out for bid for what's called super stops, and Browning will look at me and say, you've been saying that for 10 years now. But
11 years.
It's 11 years. And they will be equipped with those LCD displays. And I'm sure as we demonstrate those, they will trickle out to other parts of the system as funds become available.
Great. Hopefully there are sunnier days ahead. And just certainly as a rider, one of my experiences is just not being sure whether or not I've missed a bus or if it's running slightly behind. I guess I'm just too anxiety riddled myself. But
no, I think everybody is, and that's one of the biggest
Should I walk to the
using
next
transit.
stop?
Especially when you get there, there's nobody at the bus stop.
Right. Yeah.
Great. That's great news. I'm hopeful.
As David says, as funds become available, we would love to do all of those kinds of things.
Well, thanks for sharing the good news about the things you're going out to bid on. Best kept secret. You should get that out there. People will anticipate. Yeah, Mr. Tabor.
Thank you, Ms. Blackerby. Make sure that's BlackBerry friendly too, by the way.
Please.
You don't want to ruffle any feathers up here. I appreciate the comments about line 22. The one word I saw there when I was looking through that is that line has a lot of potential. And you would think we'd be able to capitalize on that somehow, that there's some way, some rock we haven't unturned yet to to make those jewels of some of the jewels of Santa Barbara that are accessible by that line, including that residential neighborhood, know what's available to them, and maybe, I don't know, I guess the only bright side I could see this maybe by taking it away for a while, it'll cause that to happen. And I just wanted to get briefly into that kind of opens up the whole question of transportation incentives and incentivizing the transit program and getting people out of their cars and all that kind of thing. And I think we reached the point where we've done almost as much with the carrot as we can. Everyone's been fearful of using the stick, but I think that getting the next increment of ridership is going to take more of the stick than the carrot approach to get in. So parking issues and other disincentives, and I guess naturally the cost of gasoline will be a disincentive as that continues to go up. But we're on that tipping point right now, and if I think we're going to increase numbers and all across the city, we need to start looking at different things.
Give us a call. I'm spacing on the phone number right now.
963-3364.
Yeah.
You can do that, and then there's a designated extension. I believe it's 555.
555 is a designated extension. For
and
that.
all of the information about these changes is on our website too. If people want to get in there and look more closely at the proposals, it's all available online.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. Okay, so that concludes our agenda. One thing that came up in public comment for things not on the agenda was a bike corral situation on Cannon Perdido. And I would just request that, or to ask staff if we could get that on a near future agenda.
It will be on a future agenda. We are going to have a meeting next month. It's looking pretty full right now, so it might have to wait till the following agenda, but I have to balance and kind of juggle to see which are more the priority items. I'll meet with you and we'll discuss them.
Okay. Great. Anything else? All right. Motion to adjourn would be in order.
I move.
Is there a second? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. And we stand adjourned. Thank you.